You're sitting in your car in the parking lot again, and you've been here for 7 minutes now, staring at the building entrance, feeling your stomach twist into that familiar knot. Your hand is on the door handle, but something inside you is screaming, begging you not to go in. Not to walk through those doors one more time, not to smile at people you don't care about, not to pretend that this slow suffocation is called living. You can feel it in your bones, this exhaustion that sleep doesn't fix, this emptiness that food doesn't fill, this loneliness that crowds don't cure. Last night you lay awake at 3 a.m, calculating how many more years of this you have left, how many more Mondays, how many more performance reviews, how many more times you'll have to explain why you're tired to people who are just as tired but better at hiding it. And the most terrifying part, the part that makes your hands shake as you finally force yourself out of the car, is that you can barely remember who you were before this, before you became this ghost in business casual, this machine that works and pays and sleeps and works again. Your friends, if you can still call them that, since you only see them twice a year now, keep telling you this is just life, this is what being an adult means, everyone feels this way. But there's something Rumi saw 8 centuries ago, something about the difference between being alive and truly living, between breathing and actually feeling the breath, between existing in this world and being so far removed from your own soul that you're basically a corpse with a heartbeat and a mortgage. The ancient Sufis had a term for what's happening to you, though they didn't have office jobs or credit card debt or LinkedIn profiles. They called it ghafla, this state of heedlessness, this walking sleep where your eyes are open but you're not really seeing anything, where you're moving through the world but you're not really present in your own life. Rumi watched it happen to people in the marketplace of Konya, saw men and women so consumed by the transaction, by the getting and the spending, by the desperate accumulation of things and status and security, that they forgot the very essence of why they came into this world. And here you are, centuries later, doing exactly the same dance, just with different music, with spreadsheets instead of market stalls, with performance metrics instead of grain prices, but the same ancient forgetting, the same terrible trade where you give away your aliveness, your vitality, your connection to something deeper, in exchange for what exactly? In exchange for the illusion of safety, for the phantom of security, for the promise that if you just keep grinding, just keep sacrificing, just keep postponing your actual life, then someday, somewhere in a future that never quite arrives, you'll finally be allowed to rest, to breathe, to remember who you actually are underneath all these layers of obligation and exhaustion. But let's be brutally honest about what's really happening here, because Rumi didn't deal in comfortable lies and neither should we. Every morning when you silence that alarm, you're making a choice, and I know you hate hearing that, because it feels like you don't have a choice, like the bills are real, and the responsibilities are real, and the consequences of not showing up are very, very real. But Rumi would ask you, and this question is going to sting, he would ask you, what's the point of keeping your body alive if your soul is dying? What's the point of securing your financial future if you're destroying your spiritual present? What's the point of climbing a ladder that's leaning against a wall you don't even want to scale? You spend 8, 10, 12 hours a day doing things that drain you, that bore you, that make you feel like you're betraying something essential in yourself, and then you come home with whatever scraps of energy remain and try to convince yourself that those 2 hours before you collapse into bed, those brief moments scrolling through other people's seemingly better lives, that this is your life, this is the deal, this is what it means to be responsible, to be mature, to be a functioning member of society. And maybe, just maybe, what Rumi understood and what we've forgotten is that this isn't maturity at all, it's a kind of madness, a collective insanity where we've all agreed to pretend that slow spiritual death is normal, is necessary, is the price we pay for being adults. Think about the last time you felt truly alive, not happy necessarily, but alive, present, connected to the raw reality of your own existence. For most people hearing this, that moment is so far back in their memory that it feels like it happened to a different person, to a younger, more naive version of themselves who didn't yet understand how the world works. Maybe it was in college, maybe it was traveling somewhere far from home, maybe it was falling in love before love became another obligation, another thing to manage alongside the car payment and the retirement fund. Rumi spent his entire life trying to wake people up from this trance, and the most radical thing he said the thing that makes you uncomfortable because it threatens the entire structure you've built your life on, is that all of this suffering and sacrifice and exhaustion is optional. Not easy to escape, not simple to walk away from, but optional. You're not trapped by circumstances. You're trapped by the story you keep telling yourself about what's possible, about what you're allowed to want, about what kind of life a person like you is permitted to live. And that story, that prison of narrative, is so strong, so reinforced by everyone around you, so validated by the culture you're swimming in, that even questioning it feels dangerous, feels irresponsible, feels like you're about to throw everything away for some naive fantasy. But here's what actually happens when a soul dies, while the body keeps breathing. It starts slowly, imperceptibly, like a dimmer switch being turned down so gradually you don't notice the darkness gathering. First, you stop doing the things that make you feel alive, because there's no time, because they're not practical, because they don't pay the bills. Maybe you used to paint, used to play music, used to write, used to dance, used to do something that connected you to that deeper current of meaning and vitality. And you tell yourself you'll get back to it, you'll make time later, once things settle down, once you get that promotion, once you pay off the debt, once the kids are older, once. But Rumi knew, and your own experience confirms this if you're honest, that later never comes, that the conditions are never perfect, that there's always another reason to postpone your actual life in service of some theoretical future life that exists only in your imagination. So those parts of you, those aspects of your soul that need creative expression, that need beauty, that need connection to something transcendent, they don't just go dormant, they atrophy, they wither, they die. And you feel it, don't you? You feel that deadness spreading inside you like frost on a window, numbing you, making everything grey, turning you into someone you never intended to become. The second stage of this death while breathing is when you stop feeling things fully. Everything becomes muted, manageable, kept at a safe distance. You don't allow yourself to feel the full weight of your exhaustion, because if you really felt it, you couldn't get up tomorrow. You don't allow yourself to feel the full depth of your dissatisfaction, because if you really felt it, you'd have to change everything. You don't allow yourself to feel the full extent of your loneliness, because if you really felt it, you'd realize that being surrounded by people at the office doesn't mean you're actually connected to anyone. So you develop this numbness, this ability to function while feeling almost nothing. And you mistake this emotional anesthesia for strength, for resilience, for maturity. You tell yourself you're fine, you're handling it, you're doing what needs to be done. And Rumi would tell you that this numbness, this disconnection from your own emotional reality, is the soul's way of protecting you from a life that's become unbearable. But the cost of that protection is that you stop being able to access joy too, stop being able to feel genuine connection, stop being able to experience the raw, wild, beautiful intensity of being fully human. You're safe, sure, but you're also barely alive. The third stage, and this is where it gets truly terrifying, is when you forget that there's any other way to live. You look at your life, at this carefully constructed prison of routines and responsibilities and reasonable choices, and you can't imagine anything else. The deadness becomes normal, the exhaustion becomes your baseline, the constant low-grade despair becomes just how life feels. And when someone suggests that maybe, possibly, there might be another way, you get defensive, even angry, because they're threatening the massive sacrifice you've made, they're questioning the meaning you've extracted from your suffering, they're implying that maybe you didn't have to trade your aliveness for security, your soul for a salary, your days for dollars. You start defending the very system that's killing you, because admitting that there might be an alternative is too painful, too destabilizing, too dangerous to the identity you've constructed around being responsible, being realistic, being someone who does what needs to be done no matter the cost. Rumi called this the deepest sleep of all, when you're so far gone that you don't even know you're asleep, when you mistake the dream for reality and reality for a naive fantasy that only foolish, irresponsible people believe in. Now, before you dismiss this as privileged spiritual bypassing, as some romantic notion that only people without real responsibilities can afford to entertain, let me be clear about what Rumi wasn't saying. He wasn't saying quit your job tomorrow with no plan and trust the universe to pay your rent. He wasn't saying responsibilities don't matter, that obligations aren't real, that you can just opt out of the practical requirements of existing in this world. The Sufis were actually incredibly practical people, craftsmen and merchants and scholars who understood the necessity of engaging with the material world. What Rumi was saying, and this is the part we keep missing, is that the problem isn't work itself. It's work that's disconnected from soul, it's labor that's severed from meaning, it's activity that's divorced from presence and awareness and connection to something deeper than the transaction. You can wash dishes, you can file paperwork, you can do the most mundane task imaginable, and if you're present, if you're awake, if you're connected to the sacred nature of simply being alive and conscious, then that task becomes a form of meditation, a doorway to the divine, a way of participating in the great mystery of existence. But the same task done while you're asleep, while you're numb, while you're disconnected from your own soul, becomes a kind of torture, a slow death, a grinding away of your essential vitality. So the question isn't whether you need to work, whether you need to pay bills, whether you need to meet your obligations. The question is whether you're going to continue doing all of that while asleep, while dead inside, while progressively more disconnected from anything that makes life worth living, or whether you're going to find a way, and this is the hardest thing in the world, to wake up inside your own life. And waking up doesn't mean your circumstances suddenly become easy or magical or free from difficulty. Rumi's life wasn't easy. The Sufi path wasn't about escaping suffering. It was about being so fully present to your own existence that even suffering becomes a doorway to deeper understanding, to greater compassion, to more profound connection with the truth of what it means to be human. Waking up means feeling everything, the pain and the beauty, the exhaustion and the wonder, the grief and the gratitude. It means stopping the numbing, stopping the autopilot, stopping the constant deferral of your real life to some imaginary future moment. It means finding ways, even small ways at first, to reconnect with whatever makes you feel alive, makes you feel present, makes you remember that you're not just a function or a role or a collection of obligations. You're a conscious being having this brief, mysterious, unrepeatable experience of existence. And I know what you're thinking because I hear it in the comments every week. You're thinking that's beautiful in theory, but how specifically am I supposed to wake up when I'm this exhausted, when I'm this trapped, when I have this many people depending on me, when I have this much debt, when I'm this far down a path that seems impossible to change? And here's where Rumi's wisdom becomes not just poetic, but practical. He said the way out is through awareness, through beginning to notice, really notice what your life has become. Not to judge it, not to immediately try to fix it, but to simply witness it with clear eyes. Notice how you feel when you wake up. Notice what thoughts run through your mind during your commute. Notice where you're present and where you're completely checked out. Notice what activities, even small ones, make you feel more alive and which ones deaden you further. Notice who you are when you're alone versus who you perform being for others. This witnessing, this compassionate but unflinching observation of your actual lived experience is the beginning of waking up, because you can't change what you're not willing to see, and most people are so afraid of seeing the truth of their lives that they stay asleep forever. The next step, and this takes courage that most people never gather, is to start making small choices, tiny rebellions against the deadness that begin to reconnect you with your aliveness. Maybe it's waking up 30 minutes earlier to sit in silence before the day's demands crash over you. Maybe it's taking a different route to work that's longer but more beautiful. Maybe it's saying no to one obligation that you've been shouldering out of guilt rather than genuine desire. Maybe it's spending 20 minutes doing something creative, something useless, something that serves no purpose except to remind you that you're more than a productivity machine. Maybe it's having one honest conversation where you stop performing, stop pretending, stop maintaining the facade that everything is fine. These small acts of reconnection, these minor resurrections of your deadened soul, they won't immediately transform your life. They won't pay off your debt or quit your job for you or solve all your problems. But they'll do something more important. They'll remind you that you have agency, that you're not completely powerless, that even inside the constraints and responsibilities and realities of your life, there's still room, however small, to choose aliveness over deadness, presence over numbness, authenticity over performance. Rumi tells a story that I think about almost every day. He talks about a group of people who are so accustomed to living in a dark basement that they've forgotten the sun exists. They've created elaborate systems down there in the darkness. They've built structures and hierarchies and entire ways of living that are adapted to the absence of light. And then one day someone tells them about the sun, about this source of light and warmth that exists above them, and instead of being excited or curious, they get angry. They defend the basement. They explain why the darkness is actually good, actually necessary, actually the only realistic way to live. They mock the person talking about the sun as naive, as privileged, as someone who doesn't understand how the real world works down here in the dark. And the most tragic part of the story isn't that they're living in darkness, it's that they've forgotten that darkness is even dark. They've normalized it so completely that they can't imagine anything else. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like the conversation you have with yourself every time a small voice inside suggests that maybe this isn't all there is? Maybe you don't have to live like this. Maybe there's a way to work and pay bills and meet responsibilities while still remaining connected to your own soul, to your own aliveness, to your own experience of being a conscious being in a mysterious universe. The work culture we've created, and let's be specific about this because vagueness lets us off the hook, is designed to extract maximum productivity while giving minimum space for the human things that make life meaningful. It's designed to keep you just comfortable enough that you don't revolt, but just exhausted enough that you don't have energy to imagine alternatives. It's designed to make you feel like any dissatisfaction you feel is your personal failure, your inability to be grateful enough, your lack of resilience, rather than a completely sane response to an insane way of organizing human life. And the most insidious part is that it's sold to you as freedom, as opportunity, as the price you pay for security and success, when really it's a very specific set of choices about how we've decided to structure society, choices that benefit some people enormously, while grinding others down into that numb exhaustion you feel every Sunday night when you realize the weekend is already over and it's about to start again. Rumi didn't have the language of late capitalism or hustle culture or burnout, but he understood the pattern. He understood how human societies create systems that disconnect people from their souls, from each other, from the sacred dimension of existence, and then convince them that this disconnection is normal, is necessary, is the only way. Here's the part that might make you uncomfortable, the part that challenges not just your circumstances, but your entire worldview. What if the life you're living, the one that's killing your soul slowly, isn't actually keeping you safe? What if the security you've sacrificed everything for is an illusion? You work yourself to exhaustion to maintain health insurance, but the stress of the work is literally making you sick. You sacrifice time with your children to earn money for their future, but you're missing their actual childhood, missing the relationship that money can't buy back later. You postpone joy, postpone rest, postpone really living because you're building towards some future moment of security and freedom. But people who've reached that future, who've gotten the promotion or paid off the house or hit the retirement number, they'll tell you that the promised land never quite materializes. There's always another level, another goal, another reason why you can't rest yet. Rumi would say that the security you're chasing is the security of the ego, the false self that thinks it can control life through enough planning and earning and achieving, while real security, the security of the soul, comes from being so deeply connected to your own existence, so fully present to the reality of now, that you stop living in constant fear of a future that hasn't happened yet. And here we arrive at the deepest teaching, the one that sounds absurd to the modern ear but that Rumi insisted on again and again. He said that you're not here primarily to survive, to be safe, to accumulate, to achieve. You're here to wake up, to become conscious, to experience the full spectrum of what it means to be alive, to participate in the great mystery of existence with as much awareness and presence as you can muster. And yes, that includes working and paying bills and meeting responsibilities, but those things are meant to be part of the texture of a conscious life, not the entire substance of it. They're meant to be what you do while you're awake, not the reason you stay asleep. The tragedy isn't that you have to work, it's that you've made work into a god, into the organizing principle of your entire existence, and in bowing down to that god, you've forgotten all the other dimensions of being human. the creative, the relational, the contemplative, the playful, the sacred. You've forgotten that you have a body that needs more than sleep and caffeine, that you have a heart that needs more than occasional weekend entertainment, that you have a soul that needs beauty and meaning and connection to something larger than the endless cycle of earning and spending. But here's what I need you to understand, and this is crucial. Waking up isn't an all-or-nothing proposition. You don't have to quit everything, move to a monastery, give away all your possessions and live on a mountaintop. The Sufi path, Rumi's path, was always about finding the sacred in the midst of ordinary life, about waking up right where you are, with all your constraints and responsibilities and complications. It's about bringing presence and awareness and soul into whatever you're doing, even if what you're doing isn't your dream, isn't your passion, isn't what you'd choose if you had unlimited options. It's about refusing to go numb, refusing to check out, refusing to let the deadness spread just because staying awake is painful. Because here's the thing about waking up, it does hurt at first. When you start to really feel again after years of numbness, when you start to see clearly after years of going through the motions, when you start to reconnect with your deeper desires and values after years of just doing what's expected, it's uncomfortable, it's disorienting, it's scary. The numbness was serving a purpose. It was protecting you from feeling the full weight of a life that wasn't really yours. But the price of that protection is that you also couldn't feel joy, couldn't feel connection, couldn't feel the wild beauty of being alive, even in the midst of difficulty. I need to pause here and speak directly to you, to that part of you that's been listening to this and feeling something shift, something stir, something that's been asleep for so long, you'd almost forgotten it existed. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You know the weight you carry. You know the exhaustion that's not just physical. You know the quiet desperation you hide behind productivity and busyness and the appearance of having it all together. And you've probably told yourself 1,000 times that this is just how it is. This is what being an adult means. Everyone feels this way. You just need to be stronger, more grateful, more resilient. But what if the voice telling you that is the voice of your own death, your own deadness trying to justify itself? What if there's another voice, quieter, easier to ignore, that's been trying to tell you that you're not meant to live like this, that this slow suffocation isn't normal or necessary, that there's a way to meet your responsibilities while still remaining connected to your own soul? If you're ready, even if your hands are shaking as you read this, even if you're terrified of what it might mean, write in the comments just 3 words: I'm ready to wake up. Just that, I'm ready to wake up. You don't have to explain, you don't have to justify, you don't have to have a plan. But sometimes the first step toward resurrection is admitting that you've been dead, and your willingness to admit that, to name it, to stop pretending. That might be exactly the permission someone else needs to stop pretending too. Rumi said the wound is where the light enters, and your willingness to admit the wound, to name the deadness, to acknowledge that you can't keep living like this, that's not weakness. That's the first flicker of light after a long darkness. So what does it actually look like to work and pay bills and sleep and still remain awake, still remain alive, still remain connected to your soul? It looks like bringing consciousness to the unconscious patterns. It looks like noticing when you're about to check out, about to go numb, about to slip into autopilot, and making the harder choice to stay present even when presence is painful. It looks like finding 10 minutes somewhere in your day, even if you have to wake up earlier or stay up later, to do something that reminds you you're more than your productivity, more than your roles, more than your obligations. It looks like being viciously honest with yourself about which parts of your life are truly necessary and which parts are just habit, just fear, just the momentum of choices you made years ago that you keep perpetuating because change is terrifying. It looks like having uncomfortable conversations where you tell the truth about your limits, about what you actually have capacity for, about what you need in order to stay human. It looks like disappointing people sometimes, setting boundaries sometimes, saying no sometimes, even when saying no feels selfish or irresponsible or like you're letting everyone down. Rumi talked about the caravan, about how we're all on this journey together, and how the saddest thing is when someone sits down by the side of the road, exhausted, defeated, convinced they can't go on, and watches everyone else continue without them. But here's what he also said, and this is the part that breaks my heart every time I think about it. He said that the person sitting by the side of the road isn't actually too weak to continue. They're not actually incapable or broken or fundamentally flawed. They've just forgotten how to walk, forgotten the natural rhythm of movement, forgotten that they have legs at all. They've been carried for so long, carried by systems and structures and other people's expectations, that they've lost connection with their own agency, their own power, their own ability to take even one step in a direction they actually choose. And the work of waking up, the work of resurrection, is remembering that you can move, that you have agency, that even inside all the very real constraints of your life, you still have some room, however small, to choose aliveness over deadness, presence over numbness, truth over the performance of being fine. You might be thinking that all of this sounds beautiful but vague, that I'm not giving you concrete steps, that I'm not offering a clear path forward. And you're right, because Rumi's path isn't a formula, isn't a 5-step process, isn't something you can implement like a productivity hack. It's an orientation, a way of being, a commitment to staying awake even when falling asleep would be so much easier. But if you need something more concrete, something to start with today, here it is. Tonight, before you collapse into bed, take 5 minutes to sit in silence and just breathe. Not meditation, not mindfulness practice with a goal, just sitting and breathing, and allowing yourself to be present to your actual experience without trying to fix it or change it or make it different. Notice what you feel in your body. Notice what thoughts are running through your mind. Notice what emotions are present. Don't judge any of it. Don't try to make it better. Just witness it. Just see it clearly. Because that witnessing, that compassionate observation of your actual lived experience, that's the beginning of waking up. That's the first crack of light in the basement. That's the first moment of choosing to be present to your life rather than absent from it. And then tomorrow, find one moment, just one, where you make a different choice, where you pause instead of rushing, where you say no instead of automatically saying yes, where you do something that connects you to your aliveness rather than something that deadens you further. One moment, that's all. Because transformation doesn't happen in one dramatic gesture. It happens in 1,000 small choices, 1,000 tiny rebellions against the deadness, 1,000 brief moments of remembering that you're here, you're alive, you're conscious, and that matters more than any productivity metric or performance review or bank balance. The Sufis understood something that we've almost completely forgotten, which is that the human soul needs 3 things to stay alive, to stay awake, to remain vital and engaged with existence. It needs beauty, not as luxury, but as necessity, as food for something in us that can't be nourished by anything else. It needs connection, not the shallow networking kind, but the deep soul-to-soul recognition that we're all in this together, all struggling, all trying to stay awake, all carrying wounds and hopes and fears that make us human. And it needs meaning, needs to feel that this life, this brief existence, is part of something larger, something mysterious, something that extends beyond the transaction and the transaction and the transaction. And the life we've created, the work and bills and sleep cycle we're all trapped in, systematically deprives us of all 3. We've created a world of maximum efficiency and minimum beauty, maximum productivity and minimum connection, maximum accumulation and minimum meaning. And then we wonder why we're dying inside, why we feel this constant low-grade despair, why we can't shake the sense that something essential has been lost, even though we can't quite name what it is. Rumi spent his entire life trying to name it, trying to point toward it, trying to wake people up to the reality that they were sleepwalking through a miracle. Because that's what this is. That's what we keep forgetting. Your life, right now, with all its difficulties and disappointments and compromises, is still a miracle. The fact that you're conscious, that you're aware, that you have this brief window of existence where you get to experience the staggering mystery of being alive, that's not common or ordinary or something to take for granted while you're focused on the next deadline or the next payment or the next obligation. You're a temporary arrangement of atoms that somehow became conscious, became self-aware, became capable of love and wonder and creativity and suffering and joy, and you're spending that consciousness, that awareness, that precious and fleeting aliveness, in a state of numb exhaustion, working yourself to death to maintain a lifestyle you don't even enjoy, pursuing a security that never quite arrives, postponing your actual life until some future moment that may never come. If that doesn't break your heart, if that doesn't make you want to scream or cry or immediately change something, then maybe you're already more dead than alive, and the resurrection you need is more radical than you've allowed yourself to imagine. So here's what I want you to consider as we come to the end of this. What if waking up, really waking up, is the most responsible thing you could do? Not irresponsible, not selfish, not naive, but actually the most mature and necessary choice you could make. Because when you're awake, when you're present, when you're connected to your soul, you make better decisions. You have more to give, you're more creative, more compassionate, more capable.